I can see Christian Kabbe, who's the managing director of EasyMining. Welcome, Christian. Thanks for being on Blue Planet. I love your background picture. Is that the site that you'll be talking about?
Yes, it is.
All right, very good. So, Christian, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. And I hope everyone had some lunch before, so not that you fade away. Yeah, as my presentation title already indicates, circular economy and implementing at full scale at certain sites, it's not just a question of material flows management. You also have to consider quality of the materials recovered. So, of course, there can be good and bad recycling. And of course, that's a societal question to be answered. So that's not to be done by the actors alone. Volume matter a lot if you speak about market potentials, and of course also reliability, not only in terms of homogeneity of the material, but also of the supply security matters a lot. So on the right-hand side, you see a kind of circle, which is a bit cubic, of course. But since there was also a lot of discussion in the past if incineration is end of pipe or not, if you ask me, especially if it comes to sewage sludge, which is the pollutant sink in the sanitation system, incineration of sludge is the fifth treatment step, enabling more efficient resource recovery than we had before. And yeah, now we enter our project. If you speak about circular economy, you have to partner. So there won't be projects and implementation or even value cycles, not value chains. So really, I speak about value cycles. You have to partner across sectors. So it's circular economy is really or has to provide also an end of this deep fragmentation of our economy and policy system we have faced in the past decades. So here we urgently need a paradigm shift to get forward. And yeah, for our project in Schkopau, which is the full-scale implementation of our ash-to-phos technology with a capacity, so that's the first demonstrator plant of 30,000 tons of sludge ash treatment. We have formed a joint venture with the German utility Gelsenwasser, so which provides also the advantage. It's not very local acting, so it's Gelsenwasser operates all across Germany. So, which is also important for the rollout of a certain technology. So you need players from the regions, but also with a, let's say, over-regional aspect. The picture shows the 3D shot of the plant. So here, if you speak about peer recovery and volumes, it's not just an add-on module for a wastewater treatment plant. So it's a chemical factory. And where are chemical factories ideally placed? Of course, in the chemical parks, where all the chemicals you need or you produce can be provided or used on site. So you don't increase shipping of materials across the country. The only thing we have to import is the ashes from the different sludge incinerators, which also provides the, let's say, nice benefit that we won't depend on only one utility. So we will really, let's say, based on a broader input base. Looking at circular economy on a, let's say, more high level. So the timeline on the top of the slide indicates where we are today. So of course, that's a very personal view. At present, we are just starting thinking circular and hopefully acting circular also as a consequence of thinking. So what I identified observing, let's say, this whole topic since more than a decade from different perspectives, or from the stakeholders, meaning industrial perspective, but also from the policy perspective. So I worked some years at the EPA in Germany. And got some good insights there. So we are still suffering a huge fragmentation. So on the governance level, but also on the, let's say, economic or societal level. So, and that also reduces transparency along the value chains. So here we still have chains. And that is also a big problem since, let's say, recovery of one material. Okay, you have a nice material, but you don't have a clue where to sell it, or what are the real needs and demands of the, let's say, customer side and perspectives. The regulator can, let's say, frame something, but also this requires a lot of competence and also synchronizing between the different sectors in the policy arena. So here we speak about nutrients. So it's not only, let's say, the environmental department, it also has to be the agriculture, but also the economic affairs, and then, of course, flanked by law and finance. So it's a multi-complex system that has to be adjusted to be fit for the future. And yeah, seeing the pictures of the World Bank, so it would be interesting to get more insights from there and how they see the global situation. How is our, especially the Western economy, going to survive in times where the age of cheap raw materials and cheap energy is over? So, because our prosperity is based on cheap raw materials and energy, so these times are over, I would say. So, what will be the next evolutionary step for us? And here, I think circularity is one option we should follow. And that also brings a lot of other advantages because in the circle, the actors or the stakeholders along the value cycle have to cooperate more, which also comes with increase of transparency. And that also brings the benefit that quality matters more. So in a linear setting, we are still in this kind of mindset, oh, we have some material and in the end we have a waste we want to get rid of as cheap as possible and as legal as required, which always means there are some certain quality requirements, but in the end, the main goal is getting rid of material. And this is a luxury, which we cannot afford in the future. So we have to keep materials dug out of the ground in the past, let's say, decades as long as possible in the anthroposphere. So, and here recycling plays an important role and recovery. But of course, recycling is not recycling. So there are different quality stages. And the higher the quality, the longer, let's say, the cycle can be, and the more often the material can be used without additional, let's say, efforts. Coming back to the nutrient topics of phosphorus, especially last year was some, let's say, revealing some issues, especially valid for Europe. So we had a high import dependency, especially from Russia, if it comes to the high grade materials. So this, let's say, material flow has been partly stopped already. So quite a number of factories had to be closed in Europe. So, and that's a big issue, because then if you close a factory, depending on one source, and if the source doesn't become available again, or let's say in the near future, then the whole, let's say, setting is over and the jobs and the know-how are gone. And that's something we cannot afford from the European or from the German perspective. And the good news here is the wastewater sector is relevant, let's say, and quite reliably to be considered a renewable resource stream. And if you compare, let's say, different waste streams in Europe, so manure, of course, in terms of volumes, provides the biggest potential, already mainly used, not really efficient, but of course, if it comes to volumes, then it's more or less completely used. But second, already provided by sewage sludge or sludge ashes. And the good message here is we would be able on European scale to substitute at least 1/4 of the demand by this material flow only. But of course, then comes the question how. There have been a lot of installations implemented in the past decades on-site the wastewater treatment plants, but there are technical limits, but especially if you look at the volumes, that's rather pocket dust compared to what could be tapped if you do it in the other way, following a downstream approach where you are able to cluster volumes, which then generates the opportunity to provide market relevant volumes and depending on the technology applied, also the right quality. Direct sludge spreading, of course, will continue, but the question is how long and to what will be the share in the future. Focusing on ashes, and to give you some relationship in European terms. So on the left-hand side, you see the P and mineral fertilizer consumption in Europe. In the middle column, you see the volumes available today and in the, let's say, midterm, meaning 2030, 35. So there we speak about 100,000 tons of P, which will be available from ashes. And with ashes, you can do a lot and recover also high volumes and, let's say, with high recovery rates. And that would finally more or less be the same volumes as mined in Europe today in Finland. And if you go one step ahead, if all the sludge were incinerated and P recovered with an efficient technology, then we would be able to recover around about 300,000 tons of P. And that compares to 1/4 of the demand. All figures based on statistics, and statistics, of course, have their flaws. And given more recent numbers, the share, or let's say the P demand in mineral fertilizers was even lower. So Germany reduced by 50% in the past 2 years. So, and given the German setting, we would rather be able to substitute 100% of the mineral P applied in fertilizers by the sludge train. If you have a technology, of course, you have to, let's say, go for input materials. And if you look at sludge or sludge ash, we know that it's a very heterogeneous, let's say, waste matrix. And therefore, you need a technology which guarantees a certain product quality in the end, independently from the input material quality. I won't dive into this, so you can have a look later on. So just indicating some different P recyclates with different qualities and put into relation with, let's say, traditional raw materials and the legal requirements. If you look at the ash train, again, there are in principle 2 routes or principal routes. So, and here also comes the question, what do you consider as recovery, especially if you speak about P recovery? To my mind, I recover only P if I extract it and separate it from the waste matrix. There are other interpretations, being more flexible and less strict, also considering recovery if you leave the P in the waste matrix and get a rather undefined substandard product. But of course, that's also a question of legislators and in the end society to decide what will be the way forward. The advantage, of course, is if you extract the P and if you want to be sustainable, then of course you have to also care for the rest of the ash matrix. In best case, you are able to recover also other products. So be it a sand that can be valorized in construction materials, other metals, and especially if you look at iron and aluminium. For the wastewater sector last year, there was a coagulant supply, let's say, shortage. And if you close this loop as well, then of course you can also increase resilience for the wastewater sector by their own materials. I won't dive into this, just on the bottom line to show you some examples how the main product, P recyclate, but also the co-products can look like and can be applied for. If you speak about market and volumes, and here we come to the volume aspect, especially, we have seen it in the struvite business. So there are, let's say, rather spread volumes available here and there, a few tons here, some more tons there. But in the end, the market uptake is not really there. And of course, value creation is not there. So that's directly linked to the volumes. The more volume you have, the more power you have to negotiate prices. And that's also strengthening your position to, let's say, get higher prices for the sold products. And that's in the end also for the benefit of the households connected to a specific sewer system, which is then more or less generating these recyclates. But also this, let's say, table and the lines below indicate that we still have to cope with a legal framework from the past century, being very fragmented and very focused on what we call the precautionary principle, which is blocking roads depending on origin of the material, but not on the quality. And that has to be changed. I think that's the biggest obstacle for transformation towards circular economy. And here we have to shift from an origin-based, let's say, categorizing into a quality-based, let's say, application. Another advantage, of course, that's not to be explained in more detail. If you close local cycles or domestic cycles, then of course you keep jobs in your country or in your region, and you keep the know-how. I think that's something Europeans will learn quite hard in the coming years. So we have, let's say, exported a lot of essential production to other continents, and it will be really hard to get this know-how and, let's say, the capacities back on our continent to increase our security of supply. Just summing up, so we are still stuck in a linear, or rather mine-to-dump scheme with a high degree of extraction of limited global resources. And if you also categorize resources, only industrial application and relevance is considered. But what about essentiality? Like in the case of water, so there are no people without water and no people without nutrients. So that has to be changed as well. We are still stuck, especially in the wastewater sector, in a kind of waste and disposal logic. So that also has to be changed. So there has to be more, let's say, recognition of the role of the whole sector, also if it comes to product quality mindsetting and value creation instead of value destruction. What can already be foreseen is that once the volumes are there, also markets will accelerate to develop. So in some parts, especially if it comes to tiny volumes of recovered materials, we are still in this kind of hen and egg situation. So that will change once the volumes are market relevant. If you speak about peer recovery from sludge or sludge ashes, I foresee that the main route will be more, or rather, centralized options. And given the recent discussions in Germany, will we meet the deadline set by the, let's say, policymakers by 29 or 32? Will we meet it or not? Does have the law to be postponed, etc.? I can only say from a societal perspective, the longer we wait with the investments, the higher will be the cost of inaction for all of us. And finally, let me cite one of the famous German poets. But I think it's more than true. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. Or from the innovator's perspective, innovation is an incremental of evolution, and there's no escape. So no matter how long, let's say, policymakers take to adapt the regulatory framework or society needs to adapt, evolution can never be stopped. So it can only be slowed down by ourselves. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Christian. I love that last quote. We must apply, we must do. I think that is the spirit. And there's a couple of questions. One came in regarding the technology you apply, but I think you answered that pretty extensively. There's another question from David Tompkins. I hope I get this right. He is asking, is fertilizer the highest monetary value or highest carbon value for recovered phosphorus?
So the fertilizer, let's say, if you look at the quality levels, are the lowest in terms of the, let's say, the whole P industrial scheme. Just if you compare, let's say, the fertilizer requirements with the feed requirements, so there's a big difference in there. And the question also, given the, let's say, statistical figures for Germany of the last 2 years, in the past, of course, sludge spreading is an issue for the wastewater utilities, and it's the cheapest route to get rid of the material. And of course, follows then also the disposal mindsetting. But what is the value in there putting the coagulants together with the phosphorus on the field? So to my mind, this is totally nuts. So if you are able to separate the phosphorus, so the nutrient, which of course partly belongs to the fields to feed our people, but not the coagulants. So they are better to be reused for the wastewater treatment plants themselves.
All right, super interesting. And Christian, your facility is located in Schkopau near Leipzig, which, I should point out is an old soft coal region, right? So
Right.
can you talk a little bit about the energy management of the site? Is it run on coal or renewables, or what are your aspirations for the future?
So of course the future has to be without coal, that's for sure. Unfortunately, Germany, given the, let's say, several crises of last year, reactivated quite a number of coal power plants. And for the moment, of course, part of the energy supply, a big part of the energy supply in Germany is based on fossil coal. But that's to be changed in the coming years. And also, if you look at the, for instance, acids we apply, they can be produced without, let's say, fossil-based energy. So hydrochloric acid will be produced by electrolysis, and depending on the, let's say, national energy mix, this will turn greener and greener. At least I hope that Europe is really able to manage the switch from fossil to, let's say, renewable or less, let's say, climate impactive. But in the end, the whole, let's say, discussion about CO2 emissions of different processes, to me, it's only one part of the story. In the end, we have to feed our people, and if there are no nutrients, then you cannot feed your people. And then, of course, also industrial metals don't play a role anymore, because if there are no people, then there are no consumers for electric vehicles. So as simple as that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Christian, asking for a quick answer, I think we can fit in one more question. This one is from Ed Weinberg. It's sort of beyond my my technical skill set, but perhaps you can answer it. I'm sure you can. If you extract phosphorus before ashing, would that make a better case for the other byproducts such as iron?
So he means before incineration then. So
I think so.
So from the wet sludge, I can easily say no, because then you have to handle a wet material, means a lot of water and let's say acid attack. So if you leach, water is also buffering, which means you need more acid. So we had some, I think, a pilot scale plant in southern part of Germany. So they consumed a lot of sulfuric acid on site the wastewater treatment plant. And then, of course, you also, so that's then, of course, also decentral, I would say, if you have to implement such a thing on every wastewater treatment plant. I don't really see a cost benefit there. And also in terms of technical, let's say, efforts, doing it decentralized, it's even more elaborative and costly.
Okay.
So ashes are a nice mineral concentrate, so easy to handle.
Got it. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Christian. And I'm glad that, you're firing away with questions in the chat now. And, we'll try and circle some of them maybe back to our speakers, but we need to proceed now. Thanks a lot again, Christian. This was very interesting.